Hello everybody, welcome back to Expedition Homestead. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. We've got our good friend Adrian here, all the way from Cologne with his beautiful wife Leah. Leah was a great friend of Katie's growing up and in high school, and they were able to make the trip down here to visit us, so it's been awesome having you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit the family. And then I know you're trying to get into gardening a lot, so seeing this whole setup back here must have been pretty interesting to you. So in today's video, we're going to run through a couple of different questions that Adrian has because he's starting to get into gardening a little bit more. He wants to be able to provide for his family and just take the time to learn how to grow and how to garden. So we're going to answer a couple of different questions that he might have in today's video. And then I'm also going to give a couple of different questions to him about the culture around gardening where he lives as well, because being in Cologne, I'm sure, is a completely different than an area like where we live right here. This is a rural area, a town of maybe 1,200 people compared to Cologne, which you said had about 1.1 million?
Yeah, population 1.1 million. Yeah.
Massive population compared to what we have here. So I'm sure there's a lot of different aspects to maybe gardening or growing your own food that we don't even think about. So we're going to go through all that in today's video. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Ripley. Thank you very much. Real quickly, like Ripley said, I live in Cologne right now, and there's not a lot of room actually for urban gardening outside. So maybe a quick question would be, what type of plants can I have on my balcony? And maybe a couple of vegetables, or maybe even if it's possible, fruits? Or could you maybe have any recommendations for my wife and I?
Container plants. Well, if we look right in front of us here, a great container plant is going to be tomatoes. You can grow all kinds of tomato plants, indeterminate and determinate varieties alike. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Tomatoes are a great option for 5-gallon containers. You can also grow stuff like beans, peas, broccoli, cucumbers. You can grow all of those fruits and vegetables inside a 5-gallon container. You can pick up these containers around here at local hardware stores or even big box stores like Walmart and so on. You can find these at local gardening centers as well. They're usually about $3 to $5 US each. And the great thing about growing in containers is that you can amend the soil really easily because you're adding anything you need to. It's not like you have to work with a native soil in the earth. So container gardening is really beneficial that way, because we can basically control all the different aspects of that soil. So pretty much you can grow almost any vegetable, believe it or not, within a 5-gallon container.
Okay.
The only difference is some of them you can only grow one plant. Like if you were to grow a cucumber, you would want like 1 or 2 cucumber plants in that 5-gallon container.
Okay, understandable.
And a tomato, we only put in 1 tomato plant because it's going to take up so much space. But if you have something like a root crop, like carrots, you can grow you could grow about a dozen carrots within 1 5-gallon container, just like that. So, you want to start off at the right time of the year as always, but you can grow almost anything you want in a 5-gallon container or container garden.
And one more quick question regarding this topic. Can you tell me what type of earth should I use, or what type of soil? Because I've been gardening a little bit, but I'm not that experienced. And we have a local garden center there in Germany, Bauhaus, but the earth's not that good. Do you have any recommendations where I can find a good soil for my my balcony for the containers?
So I would start off at your local garden center. And buy a potting mix. So they'll have a standard potting mix that you can use for flowers, vegetables, all kinds of plants, indoor, outdoor plants. So if they have a specification, look for an outdoor potting mix. And from there, the only thing you have to narrow down after that point is what sort of fertilization is needed. So for our tomatoes, they need a 3-5-5. So it's a high potassium phosphorus mix. Compared to different sort of vegetables will require different fertilization. So start with a base of potting mix and then buy separate fertilizers for those to give the nutrients to the plants that need it. Tomatoes, like I said specifically, it's a 3-5-5. So it's nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. It's a high potassium and phosphorus mix
And
for those.
okay, again, regarding the topic of the container, like plants in containers, I was just curious, how often do you actually have to water then your
Sure.
plants? Because, for example, I've read online like you should stick your finger in there, and but I don't really understand because sometimes I stick my finger in there and it's not that wet, and then
Yep.
I think to myself, well, maybe I should water it. And then one time I overwatered a tomato plant, and then it started to hang over
Sure.
and turn different colors, and then it died. So,
Yep.
do you have any like
Yeah, there's a
tips
couple
for
of
me? Yeah.
a couple rules of thumb, like you were talking about with the fingers. I go 2 knuckles deep,
Okay, okay.
and if it's moist at all, like if that soil is still dark and not dry and grainy, if you could pick it up and form it in your hands,
Okay.
then I would say that it's moist enough to go a couple of more days. I don't know what the relative humidity is in Cologne, but here in Wisconsin, we have a really high relative humidity. It's usually really humid in the summer months. So if we don't get any rain, then I'm usually out watering my containers like 2 days, 3 days a week.
Okay.
So every couple of days.
Up
But
a
if
couple
I
of days.
if I
Okay.
still reach in that soil in the top couple of inches, and it's moist, I'll just wait till tomorrow and see if I should water at that point. But generally, if you can form that soil and it's still dark, if it's still got a nice dark color, then you're really not going to have to water yet. And the other aspect to that is going to be what sort of drainage the container
Yeah.
has.
Okay.
Some containers, believe it or not, come without drainage. So that can be a little bit more tricky because then you have to regulate how much water you give them
Okay.
when you water. But if your containers have drainage, you can really, fill up that whole container with water. The soil is going to
Okay.
soak up what it needs to, and all of the rest is just going to drain out.
Drain out.
Yep. So generally, about 2 to 3 times per week for most plants are good. With tomatoes, carrots, onions, those specifically really like even watering. So they like a
Even watering.
consistent
Okay.
schedule. We don't want to go a week without
Without it.
watering.
Okay.
And then the very next week, do a bunch of watering several days in a row. So stay consistent with the watering is going to give you the best fruit and vegetables as possible as well.
Oh, and let's say that you were able to successfully grow your plants, and then you're able to harvest what you put into the soil. And let's say I want to start again. We're on topic with tomatoes, and I would like to collect the seeds from tomatoes.
Yep.
Do you have any recommendations on how I can preserve the seeds for the next summer, and how long am I able to use these seeds or utilize these seeds
Sure.
for the future years, or
Yep.
let's say months, or so to say?
For those seeds, so it depends on the type of plant. For your root crops, your actual true vegetables,
Yeah.
you're going to be harvesting the seed pods that come up. Usually after the point where we're going to harvest the vegetable, because
Okay.
so for instance, our radish that we have behind us,
Yeah.
you're going to harvest that radish before it produces seeds. Otherwise,
Oh.
the vegetable is not going to taste very good at all. So
Okay.
what a lot of people do and what I do is I'll keep a couple of plants that I have solely for the seed production.
Oh,
So then once
okay.
it bolts and it produces those seeds, I can store those.
Okay.
Sometimes they are just dried up in pods. They'll dry on the stalk, and all I have to do is put them in a Ziploc bag or a plastic, not plastic, a paper bag in a cool and dark place that you have in your
Cool and
home
dark
or
place.
apartment. A
Okay.
cool, dark place. Yep.
Okay.
If there's any sort of moisture or higher temperatures, anywhere above 75 degrees, that's going to make those seeds less viable the year after. But with tomatoes, you would basically just take slices, you can dry those out, and then you would separate the seeds from the actual tomato filaments and the matter of that tomato. From there, you can store it again in a paper bag. Those can last anywhere from a single year up to like 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
But usually
Yeah.
I try and
Interesting.
just keep the seeds for the next season. Otherwise, your chances of a lot of them not being viable, obviously that goes up. But if we can plant them the next year or the year after that,
Yep.
and that's ideal.
Yeah, that's very understandable. And because I've practiced with my wife trying to grow from our own seedlings, to go actually from the seed into the little mini plant and then to actually transplanting that into a big container. And I did that with about like about 15 tomato seeds. But then all of a sudden, 14 died.
Ah, sure.
Do you have
Yep.
any recommendations on, or like any advice on how to like keep my plants
How to grow
alive?
the
Because
seedlings.
I think my light intensity wasn't that well.
Sure.
Because I was on the balcony a lot and the weather was a little bit cold maybe.
Yep.
And only one survived. And
Okay. So with seedlings, they can be a little bit tricky. I know it's growing your own seedlings is a great way to save a ton of money.
Yeah.
And then you can also grow different sort of varieties that you can't buy at a lot of stores by growing the seeds. You can grow a lot of heirloom varieties,
Yeah.
which is one of the biggest reasons as to why I start by seeds. But the seedlings, they require, again, a very consistent watering schedule. Lighting, if lighting was the problem, what you would see is
Yeah.
really long,
Yep.
leggy seedlings,
Yep,
and then they would
exactly.
tip over.
Yes, sir.
And what happens is when they tip over, that pinches off the stem, so then it can no longer transfer nutrients in the plant. So if they're long and leggy and really thin and they've got no strength to them, then it's not enough light. If you need more light, you can buy cheap grow lights on any website or any garden center too. You don't need any expensive lights.
Expensive
For
ones,
like
okay.
50 to 75 euros even, you could get a light that's going to provide you enough power to grow your seedlings. If it's not the light, then it's most likely going to be the water, because nutrients don't matter so much for seedlings. It's really, we have to focus on water and light for the first month or month and a half of their growing stage. If you don't have a good water schedule and you don't have good light, you're not going to grow the seedling. So keeping the soil steadily moist. You always want it to be moist, not soaking wet, but really you're going to be watering your seedlings just about every single day, as long as you have a draining container.
Yep.
So you got the little seed starting kits. Keep it watered every day. Make sure that soil does not dry out, and that's going to help you a lot when growing seedlings, is that moisture level. Something else that some people do sometimes is they'll mist their seedlings during the germination stages. So when it's still just coming out with those cotyledon leaves, the first two leaves that come out of the soil. Yep. If you mist it instead of watering the soil with a can or something like that for the first week, some people do that too. And put a humidity dome over your seedlings. It's a clear plastic cover.
Okay, yeah.
So that holds that moisture in there as well. Again, moisture is going to be a really important factor when growing seedlings.
And do you want to put seedlings in direct sunlight for how many hours, or could you?
Sure.
I know it depends on the plant, but
So if you ever heard of the term hardening off?
unfortunately not.
So
No.
hardening off is when people will grow their seedlings indoors, or they get them at a nursery that's been growing them indoors their whole lives.
Okay.
And then when you bring them outside under the sunlight, they actually burn. And so this is only going to matter if your seedlings are grown indoors during their whole lives up to that point. But if you are growing your seedlings outdoors only, and it is getting sunlight throughout its whole life, in the very, very early stages, you want to try and get as much sunlight as you can.
Possible, okay.
You can grow these seedlings in full sunlight as long as they've been growing out there their whole lives. You're perfect. You're golden.
You're golden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the goal of the whole gardening, I'm pretty assume.
Yep.
Yeah.
Adrian, I had a couple of questions for you too. How do you grow your vegetables on a basis to where you think you'll be able to feed your family? Is it more like, I know you have allotments, and when I visited Germany, allotments was really popular. So you would like rent out a space or something like that?
Yes.
Is that something that you guys do now?
Yeah, so basically right now we live in Cologne and the population density is very high. So it's very, very difficult to find a space for your family for gardening. it's practically impossible unless
Yeah.
you're pretty wealthy, I would say.
Yep.
And even then, it's difficult to even get these small allotment gardens
Sure.
because there's a waiting list. So
Okay. Wow.
yeah, it
So
takes a couple.
there's a high demand
High
for it, at
demand for
least,
gardening.
right?
Yeah, everyone wants
Yeah.
to be outside, and not a
Okay.
lot of people can afford it, you know. So there's a
Yeah.
long waiting list. But we got lucky because we were just walking by this big field. We saw a woman, spoke with her, and she said, "Hey, check out this website. Here we have this shared gardening."
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we signed up.
Yep.
We got on a waiting list, and we had to click right there on the second, like, to reserve the spot.
Yep.
And so we reserved 50 square meters
Awesome.
of
That's
gardening
cool.
space.
Yeah.
And but with this shared gardening, that the gardener would basically, or the farmer, so to say, sorry, he basically planted everything for us. So we started in the end of March, I think, to April,
Sure.
around
Yep.
there,
Right.
and did everything, like plow the field, get everything ready for us, planted the small plants in there, and all we have to do is basically pick out the weeds, water. Not always, he says, because
Sure.
it depends. Like if it's in the earth, it depends on how. Yeah, that's
Yep.
different. And then he said basically that all we have to do is harvest our plants.
Oh, cool.
So
That's nice.
So
That
we
is
play.
really nice.
If I can tell you guys, we paid around 200 euros
For the whole season.
for the whole season. So about 1 year. So
Yep.
I think we can go basically till January because there's different salads that grow in January still
Okay.
in Germany. It's not.
Yep. You
Ca-
have
in compa-
an early season crop, and then you have a late season crop. Stuff you can plant during the middle of summer that will keep on growing up until the fall season.
And when you compare Germany as where we live in Cologne to Wisconsin, you see that in Wisconsin they have very drastic winters and it gets very cold. But in Cologne it barely snows, and when it snows,
Okay.
it's basically slush for one day,
Yep.
and then
gone.
it's gone. So
Gone. Yep.
basically it just gets really windy there, and it is humid in the summer.
Sure.
But it's nothing like here in Wisconsin.
Okay.
The weather is a little bit more relaxed, but it's
Yeah.
very windy in Cologne,
Very
and
cool, though.
and
That's
cloudy
really-
as well. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
really nice that you have that opportunity to grow in a space, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot of space to a lot of people, 50 square square meters, but you can grow a lot of food. Like in this backyard here that we have 9 raised garden beds. I grow in the raised garden beds because I think it's easier to amend the soil
Yes.
and for weeding and stuff like that. But just in this space here, there's enough for not only me and my family for the season, and we're also going to feed a lot of our neighbors too and give away a lot of this food to other people that we know. So with different techniques like trellising, we talked a little
Yeah.
bit about that earlier, trellising your tomatoes, trellising your cucumbers, beans, peas, anything that's going to vine and grow up. By trellising that, you save so much space, and you can grow a lot of food in a rather small area too, I would say. So it's all about using different techniques that some people might not utilize. That's going to save you a lot of space, and you can grow a ton of food in a small area. So it's really good that you have that.
Yeah, and I think that just having the opportunity, like we've talked this morning with your children as well, that you're able to share experiences with your family and
Yeah.
teach your children how to garden. And yeah, for example, in Cologne, that there's a lot of people who have low incomes, and it's very difficult even to get on this list to reserve a small allotment garden. And they have children, like 3 or 4 children, in a small 2-bedroom apartment. And yeah, it's pretty difficult actually when you're considering gardening and like taking your kids outside. And that's why I think families really need to enjoy the piece of land that they have, if they have land and they can
Yep.
afford it. So like I'm saying, with me and my wife in Germany, we don't have any children, but in the future, if we would like to stay in Germany, we have to consider that.
Yes.
And if we had to plan for the future with a small allotment in order to show our children how to garden, because I think sustainability and gardening is the future to a lot of world
Yes.
problems.
Yep. You guys don't know this, but Adrian is extremely ingrained in sustainability
Yeah.
and how important it is for each and every one of us, not only today, but in the future, because there's so many different practices that are, I mean, it's downright destroying our earth. And gardening is a big part of my life because of that. On this, what we call a homestead, we grow these foods because we're going to avoid packaging, we avoid plastics, we avoid all of the costs of the fuel that is generally used to create these crops in a field up to thousands of miles away, that now has to be hauled all the way
Yes.
to the grocery store for me to go and buy. we bypass all of that by growing it in our own backyard. And the chickens that we got now, we are able to raise chickens and get those eggs that
Yep.
provide really high nutrient levels for me and the family. And then all at the same time, we're able to create incredible experiences throughout this journey of learning how to garden and how to grow our own food for our friends, families, and neighbors as well. So it's all kind of comes full circle. So it's bigger than just gardening.
Additionally, I just wanted to say even that aspect with sustainability is essential for me. But I'm a student, and my wife is a master's student as well in Germany, and we don't have that much money. So going back to just collecting seeds and basically doing it yourself,
Yep.
you're saving that money.
Yes.
And then, in all honesty, like, yeah, I don't mind saving money at the moment. And the thing is, like, we don't have the money to always buy these expensive bio products. And at the end of the day, like what you said, it's better when you put a little bit more effort and time, and you find little things. What we found basically with 50 square meters, that's enough for 3 people for a whole year for vegetables.
Yes. Yep.
And fruits. And I think to myself, like, yeah, we had to pay 200 euros for that, but at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it, because we were saving a lot of plastic being produced and a lot of oil being utilized. And at the end of the day, with sustainability, it's very important what you said, that we need to think about the future for our children. And what I really like, I've been watching Ripley's videos for, like, I don't know, like about a year and a half now. I think you have the channel a lot longer.
Yeah, we've had the channel for almost 4 years now.
Yeah. But I binge watched all of his, pretty much like all of his YouTube videos, and they're so informative, and I couldn't recommend a better channel.
Cool. Thank you so much, dude.
Yeah.
It means a lot to see that, you know, I'm able to change some lives for the better. And that's what I do it for. My main purpose and goal is to show people that gardening is not as hard as some people make it seem to be, because there's so many different ways you can garden, but the most important thing is to garden in a way that's fun to you, that's enjoyable to you. Whatever methods that is, make sure you do that, because if it's not fun and if it's not enjoyable, you know, it just makes the whole process so much harder. So don't get caught up in all the rules of gardening. Just get out there, get it done, and have fun with it.
I really like that mentality.
Cool. Thanks, man. Well, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in today. And if you have any questions, make sure you comment down below. Adrian, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
It's been such a blessing.
Yeah, thank
All right,
you.
take care, man.
Take care.